Okay, I've started the recording.
Cool. This small. Actually, let's minimize that. Okay, cool. So I'll just kind of do a walkthrough of some of the more important cards that I think are important in the deck and that are really fun, in my opinion. So just starting off, just kind of we'll start at the top and work downwards. So one card that I've been testing recently is Invasion of Gabakan, that battle. So this one's really weird. No one really. It's basically a bad thought seize on the ETB, so no one ever counters it. Like it's never ever gonna get countered. But it's really nice for sniping tutor targets or preventing fast wins. So I usually, whenever I use this card, I usually use it on like the first or second. I usually use it on whoever's in the lead. So usually it's going to be the person in first, second seat, or the person who has like a card draw engine online and has been drawing a decent chunk of cards. I just snipe whatever card is the best against me or just best in general. Usually it's a tutor target or like a tutor itself or something that could really harm my game plan. Like for example, if they have a Cyclonic Rift in their hand and it's like turn 5, I can make it cost 2 more mana, which prevents it by almost a full turn cycle usually. And I actually ran into a funny game the other day with this card. So a Shorikai had put out a Humility, which shuts off this deck basically entirely. But I had this card down, and I flipped it over to the backside, and I was able to pump my board up enough to kill the Shorikai player.
Okay.
Yeah. So it adds up, especially if there's like if you have really good stacks pieces down to really lock the game down and build up board presence, even if your creatures are ones with no abilities, you can grow them really big really quickly because it buffs your everything that attack.
Definitely.
And the fact that you also don't have to hold up mana for a protection spell like this to give it hexproof and indestructible to everything has made this card overperform for the mana value that it is.
Yeah.
It's still not my favorite turn 2 play, but it is pretty good. And it's the only bad thing about it is that it doesn't play well with rule of law effects because you have to do a cast trigger on the backside.
Yeah.
But that's really the main concern with this specific card. But I haven't found that to be too much of an issue so long as you get it down pretty early.
And Cyclonic Rift is also a big threat to this deck. So just timing it right when you know the opponent will Cyclonic next turn can be a big game changer.
Yeah, it can really, because if you can buy one extra turn with even that, just like hitting a Cyclonic Rift, you can just then kill them before they can play their Cyclonic Rift. Or they have to do a mini Rift and it's not nearly as good.
And especially if you have a no world kind of effect, then getting to 9 mana can be very difficult.
Yeah, for a lot of decks, 9 mana can be pretty hard to get to without act.
7 takes a long time, but you are giving them a long time with this deck.
Yeah. Turn 7 is usually where this deck is looking to kill people. Turn 7, turn 8, and that's assuming that there's no board wipes in like the first before that. If you get like Toxic Deluge on turn 4 or something like that, the game's going to usually go much longer.
So that's why you always hit down the hit points of the Toxic Deluge person first. Usually, not always, but like.
Yeah, you always want to hit the person usually that's going to have the most outs. So like really Esper shells are really the worst matchups for this kind of deck. Esper and also sometimes like the other one that can kind of blow us out is the Culling Ritual as well.
Culling Ritual is so nice. I love that card.
So Culling Ritual actually doesn't hurt this deck a ton. It just takes all of our roll tokens off and kind of makes us start from 0, which is kind of bad.
It stops the clock.
But what's really nice, I think every single time I've had a rule of law effect down in someone's Culling Ritual, they did not win the game because they couldn't use the mana. So that was one thing that I like. Okay, moving on. So creatures are pretty standard in green-white. Most important ones is my favorite Gilded Goose. That's my favorite 1-drop in the deck, just because it's hilarious. Yeah, that 0/2 toughness gets around Bowmasters, and it is a flying attacker, which makes it really good. Other ones of note, I have added the entire, except for Mom, ETB hate effects that I'm testing currently. So Hushbringer, Tocatli, and Hush Wingriff are all in the deck.
Yeah.
Which might seem odd, considering we're on Solitude and Endurance. But if you think about it, what does Endurance usually stop? It stops mostly Thassa's wins, and it just stops like graveyard decks like Time. If Time doesn't have access to their ETBs, it's going to be harder for them to win. And Time is only one deck. Thassa's is the win con that I've lost to the most, besides just straight up beatdown that I'm doing or people are doing to me.
Yeah,
So
ETB stopping is so powerful. Also, like spell seeker lines and all kinds of crazy stuff just gets stopped by ETB hate.
yeah, there's a lot of decks that use creature ETBs to their advantage, and we do run a couple. Like we of course run Ranger Captain of Eos. We run our Commander, who's an ETB, and then Endurance and Solitude. Is there any other ones that I run? I don't think so. I think it's just those ones. And Champion of Deadpool as well. ETB. And Yashar, yes. I don't really care too much about Yasharn, so let's just grab 2 lands. So that one's not that bad if we turn that one off. But turning off Ranger Captain and turning off Champion of Lambhold is pretty bad, but it's not the end of the world.
You can pump the Lambhold with a
Virtuous with a roll token. Yeah, Lambhold's so it's not been a huge issue. So I think that it's been working out pretty good. I cut Elishnorn Mother of Machines for Tocatli, because I found that having it early was better than having a 5-drop. Having the 5-drop is nice, but if you look at our curve, it's already pretty high for most CEDH decks. And while we can make a decent chunk of mana, we don't really need to double ETBs, so you basically have half a card that's useless. You're just using it really for the stats and the ETB hate. It does turn off everything, which is nice, and that has been relevant a couple of times. But usually it's like an off meta deck that is going to be winning with something like that, like a Tatiova or something like Time again, doing like enchantment ETBs to make a bunch of tokens or counters or whatnot. Usually it's creatures. That's like 95% of what things are gonna hit. Yep. But yeah, so that's why I kind of been trying it. I've been liking it to do the ETB hate. It does suck for our Commander ETB to get turned off, but like in a past game that I was playing, Atraxa is another deck that I've been playing against a decent amount. And one ETB hate card, and it kind of shuts their entire game plan off because their main win is Thassa and their Commander, and they don't get either of those with an ETB hate in play. So yeah. It's been pretty good. Other notable creatures, I think that's most of them. The other ones we've kind of already talked about. Kataki's in here. He's a really nice way to slow down early games. It's one of my favorite turn 2 plays as a stacks piece. Besides, of course, like a Dranith.
Yeah.
Dranith is probably the best one if you're in the first game. Yeah, or Oof. But so actually, I've actually been waiting more to drop Oof. Unless someone is like really starting to go off. Yeah, I really like to hold up the Collector Oof or the Stony Silence until they put all of their artifacts into play, and then I turn them all off.
Yeah, you will just draw a counterspell from somebody, and they will not be convinced that it's the other person that's the most scary because they have a shit ton of artifact mana.
Yeah, it's sometimes rough to do that, but you have to sometimes kind of convince them. Like some guy did that exact same thing. I played a Stony Silence. He countered it because he had like 2 treasures. To be fair, it was a good play by him because then he played a Karn. So I was like, oh, okay, that's fine. But I was like, if you didn't follow that up with something, you just unlock the rest of the table for no reason. But yeah, I have been considering putting Halvar back in for testing it, but I still cannot find a really good, because I basically have to cut a 4-drop for it because I really don't want to add another one in because our curve's already pretty crowded.
I find that I tutor for Halvar like a third of my games.
Really? You like it that much?
Sometimes there's just one person and you just want to kill them. You just want to be like, okay, you die now. And that's
Yeah.
really what Hovar does.
Would Archon of the Wild Rose kill them the same amount?
Um, I don't think so, but I haven't really been like keeping exacto track. I
Mm-hmm.
think my games today, like, no, Archon would not have done what Halvar did. No.
Yeah. So the reason I'm on Archon instead of Halvar is solely
Suppression.
based on the fact, yeah, it's just people have blockers.
Yeah,
And so Halvar absolutely has a higher ceiling than Archon of the Wild Rose, but it has a much, much lower floor.
definitely.
Because if you swing into someone and they have a 1/1 blocker, like unless you're pairing it with something like a Kodama or a Champion of Lambholt effect or flyers, which is another thing I really love about the deck and why I've been considering putting it back in. It's because we run a ton of flyers. It just isn't quite as consistent as Archon of the Wild Rose is for getting in damage.
Yeah.
Halvar
Yeah.
is always going to do more damage wise for sure. And that I didn't actually know that you could move auras around at the beginning of each combat, which is actually really fun.
And then Halvar's a blocker with like 4/4 double strike. That's so
Like,
nice.
come at me, yeah.
And you put it on your commander, and then you attack, and you put it back on the thing from which you moved it to put it
Yeah.
onto your commander. It's like the tricks with Halvar are pretty sweet.
Yeah, so I've been really considering putting him back in. I just don't know what I'll cut for it.
It makes sense. I currently don't run the Archon of the Wild Rose, but I think either's like a very valid choice.
Yeah, I think that maybe running one or the other is probably the move. I just liked Archon better as well because you can tutor for it with the Invasion of Ikoria. You can't tutor for Halvar with Invasion of Ikoria,
Yeah.
um, which is a consideration.
So, I want to add some things to the creatures you talked about. I want to add
Mm-hmm.
the thing about Sanctum Prelate. Here,
Always
most
thank you.
often 2 is chosen. This stops a Cyclonic Rift. Cyclonic Rift is really one of the worst enemies of this deck. So I think that's a very important card to understand, because a lot of people, they like, if you don't understand that, then this card seems useless almost.
Yeah, it is. I have actually on more than one occasion situationally named a different number
Yeah, like
whenever I
this.
know someone tutored for something. So say, for example, you know someone tutored for a Blasphemous Act, which basically has the same effect on this deck as a Cyclonic Rift. I 100% named 9.
Yeah.
It felt bad because I couldn't use it for any other thing, but they weren't casting that Blasphemous Act into me, which won me the game, actually.
I think my favorite early game tutor creature is the Archon of Emeria. I feel like
Yeah.
it just does a lot. It slows everything down. Fetch lands are horrendous playing against the Archon of Emeria, and just having a Rule of Law just saves our ass most of the time.
Yep. I would say that Archon is probably good if you have a nice board setup already.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know. Usually I'm tutoring for Oof to start with because it usually has the same effect. And it's cheaper usually because if I'm tutoring on turn 3 for a stacks piece, I don't have enough mana for Archon with a tutor. But I do usually have enough for a collector Oof. But I definitely think Archon is. I know there was some discussion about whether we should run Rule of Laws or not. Regardless, if you're running all of them, you 100% need to be on Archon. It's too good to not play.
Yeah, I think, like, if you don't want to run Rule of Laws, I think this I think the Rule of Laws might be our most powerful stacks piece. I think first most powerful stacks piece is Rule of Law, and second is activated abilities of artifacts, like oof-like effects.
Yeah, I agree. There's only a couple decks that can really play well under Rule of Laws, and it's stuff like Yuriko, Nagila,
Kinnan,
Kinnan, kind of, if they have enough mana.
Sisei.
Yeah, Sisei is one of the hardest matchups for this deck. You basically have to get Linvala or you die.
I find Yuriko, Kinnan, and Sisei are like big problems. Like, then
Yeah,
you
those
don't want to
are.
play the Rule of Law usually, because you just
Yeah,
get out
yeah.
tempoed.
I've also been usually saving my rule of laws until. So I'll always try and land an early stacks piece, but I really do not want Archon to be my play on turn 3 most of the time. Unless someone is actively going to win, I usually do not want to be developing an Archon on turn 3 with like 4 or 5 cards left in my hand. That's usually not where I want to be.
Depends what the cards are. If I have a bunch of mana birds, I might get greedy and pump them in between. But usually, I feel like Archon gives me like some safety that people will not just Torkoal you out, you know?
Yeah, it's just I found that if I do that, I sometimes, especially if there's another deck at the table that can place a lot of things on other people's turns, like a Talion deck or a Nimrus deck or something like that. If you get that turn 3 rule of law down and they just don't really care, they're gonna outvalue you way more than you can outvalue them.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been kind of messing around with trying to hold my Archons and my rule of laws for as basically being the last good card in my hand to play. So like I'll have like I'll hold up some interaction in my hand still, some other stuff that I can play maybe later in the game. Like if I have like a 6-drop or something that I'm not going to be able to play for a couple turns, I can hold that obviously up. But I want to try and get down all of my low CMC stuff that I can enchant before I put down my rule of law usually.
Yeah,
Not always. It's very game dependent, but
usually I have like one burst, like the first turn with like a mana dork or something. But the
yeah.
moment I can put a Rule of Law into play, usually I will just do it. Because I feel like just slowing down people, their artifact mana and everything. Like a mana crypt on their Archon is like such a bad play, man.
Yeah, that's very true. You just got to make sure that you can keep applying pressure if you're putting that rule of law down, or have a good way to protect it as well.
Right, yeah. I think a good way to protect it is pretty nice. But sometimes people will just protect it because some deckers are mid-rangey and then they think like they will get more advantage out of it, and then somehow you slap a Sigarda down and they didn't even realize that card existed, you know, and then like
It's so fun to play cards people don't know exist.
yeah, so that's like that can be a good option because I feel like under Rule of Law the blue decks keep each other in check because somebody
Yes,
will
that
play
is
something
very
bad
true.
and somebody else will counterspell it, and then that's all they can do.
Yes, I definitely think that. I don't remember who was saying it in the Discord server, but I definitely think rule of laws are a mainstay of this deck. I don't think that you can run this deck efficiently well into the late game without a rule of law in play.
Yeah,
It's just a good way to protect you.
the moment somebody psych rifts or chain of vapors a Rule of Law, like if that person's not winning, then the next person in turn order is winning.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Exactly. Okay. Sorcery's pretty standard here. Green Sun's Finale, Amarius Call, and the Turn Timber. I have actually cast both of those in this deck. So they and you can pitch them both to both Force of Vigor for Turn Timber and then Amarius Call for the Solitude. And so I think that they're worth the slots.
I think so too, and I don't think the three life is a lot. I think there are some
No,
like funky lifelink creatures which we can just use. Oh, you don't
yeah,
want the
Sarah.
Elite of Life's Bounty?
Yeah, so I actually cut that one.
It's fine.
Because we cut it because we're still on suppression field and I've non-bunned myself a couple times with that.
And
I
Yashar
do
also
really
fits
like the
it.
card.
I do
Yeah,
like the
yeah,
fact that
trying
it's like
also.
a one drop with lifelink is also pretty decent.
Yeah, no, it's definitely very good. I think I cut it for a protection spell because I wanted to test it out a little bit more. Um, but it is one that is. It was one of the last ones on the chopping block for sure. For all sealed.
Um,
I definitely think it would probably be my 37th creature if I was going to add another one.
could be, could be.
I also cut Triumph of the Hordes. I don't know if you're. I don't think you're on that one. No, you're not. Yeah,
No,
but I
but
cut Triumph because it was getting countered too many times.
yeah, that spell all it does is get countered. That's with the
Yeah, so I'm
Warlight.
just like, just we only run one thing that gets stuff through Allosaurus.
Mhm.
Yeah, so just wasn't quite good enough for me. Um, So instance, pretty normal green-white cards: Path, Sword, Silence, Worldly Tutor, Chord. I think you're on Chord as well, aren't you? Yeah, you
I
are.
do run Court, but I also run Tamio Safekeeping and Search of Salvation.
Yeah, so that's kind of the. Those are the kind of replaced by Legolas's Critical Reflexes and Everybody Lives. I'm still testing Everybody Lives. I don't know if it's good enough to stay in the deck. Kind of the idea behind it is being able to prevent Thassa wins without a rule of law in play that everyone wants to resolve,
Yeah.
while also being a coin ritual protection and any other board wipe protection. It does protect everybody's stuff, which is not amazing, but you do get the flexibility where if someone's trying to blow up your own stuff, you can. It's basically just a 2 mana Tamio's protection, or anything else like that,
I
while
think
also still being able to prevent Thassa's wins.
it makes total sense to check out this card. I haven't played it because I'm like it's not legal yet, so I don't know if it's
Yeah.
good to do that to my opponents. But I don't know. I could
Yep.
ask, you know.
Yeah. This is just my testing list, so I'm just trying to test everything that comes out. And then Legolas's Quick Reflexes. This card fucking slaps.
Split Second is awesome. It's really
Yeah.
great.
So the floor for this card is a 1 mana uncounterable protection on any creature you control. That's the floor.
Yeah.
Ceiling is in response to someone attacking you. So let's say someone's attacking you because you're fully tapped, you attacked with all your creatures, and you didn't have any other ones to play. Say someone's attacking you with a Tymna, 2/2. Say you have a Birds of Paradise in play. You can untap your Birds of Paradise, block the Tymna, tap your Birds of Paradise that has a roll token on it, of course, to deal another 3 damage or 4 damage to something else. So
Right.
yeah, it's pretty. So like that, and that's not even. I guess that's kind of the ceiling. The real ceiling would be like if you had like a Weathered Wayfarer, you could that was getting targeted for removal. You could untap it, fizzle the removal, tap it, search a land, and also kill something.
Yeah, that's
So
pretty sick. Yeah,
yeah,
like when I looked at this, I was like, oh, it doesn't protect my Oblivion Stone, my No Rods, my Stony Silence. Like it
yeah,
doesn't protect my artifacts and enchantments. Um, which I do like about the other two, like the Tamio
yeah.
Safekeeping and the
Yeah,
Search.
and I honestly think I don't think I've tried Everybody Lives in like a couple games, probably like 5 games. I think I've seen it so far, and every single time it's not come up because either A, I didn't have enough mana for it, or B, the situation just never came up where I would want it over something else. So I think I'm probably gonna cut it for Tamio's safekeeping, just because Tamio's is a little bit. It's obviously more narrow, but it's better protection on anything that you control.
Yeah.
Um, which is really nice. But Legolas's Quick Reflexes is just the fact that it's uncounterable is
Awesome.
stupidly good.
Yeah. Split
Yeah, so
Second
that
is
one's
great.
so good. Yeah. Artifacts. So you will notice no Soul Ring. I
Yeah,
don't know if
that's
I
a
don't think.
big one. Like that's the big
Yeah,
change
you're
between
also
us.
on
I don't have a
those. Oh, yeah,
Crypts.
you are on Soul Ring. Yeah,
I like it too much. It's just like there's like a lot of games where we don't get to stick a no world type of effect, and then just having 2 extra mana is so much.
it is. But I have played multiple games now
Mm-hmm.
where the hands that Soul Ring are good in, you have to have very, very, very specific cards for it to be good. You have to have a green land. You have to have a white land, which isn't that big of an ask. And then you have to have something big that you want to cast on like turn 2, like Yasharn
Or Ellie.
or something like that. Well, but Ellivere with nothing to enchant is garbage.
I don't know. It's like not the best. But like if the turn afterwards you flash in a Hushwing Glyph and a Sylvan Safekeeper or something like that,
But then
like
it's too late. That's like turn 3. You're actually affecting the board. If you like, we need to be affecting the board before turn 3. That's my main gripe with Soul Ring, because you have to spend, unless you have like an Elvish Spirit Guide or a Lotus Petal or some other, like if you have a Mana Crypt and a Soul Ring in your hand,
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you have free mana to get out your Soul Ring, then it can be good, because then you can do another play still on turn
Mm-hmm.
2. But if you only have turn 1 land Soul Ring, and nothing, because we don't really have any colorless things to follow it up with except for a Null Rod,
Mm-hmm.
um, then it just was not a good tempo play, because every single time on turn 2, instead of playing a stacks piece, you want to like cast your Ellivere or something like that. That's what I'm saying. You literally have to exactly have a 4 mana stacks creature for with a Soul Ring and 2 lands. So that's already, what is that? 1, 2, 3. That's, you
Four.
have to have 4 very specific cards for Soul Ring to be good.
Often I feel like I cast my mana dorks rather than my soul ring turn one. And then
Yeah.
usually turn two I will just have like something like a 3 drop or something, and then I will just tap the land I already have, maybe miss a mana drop, and then tap my birds and cast an Archon or something like that. I don't know, like I feel like the imprinting a card and losing card advantage early game is pretty devastating on this deck. Like it's pretty good Comox because you can get a turn one no rod or oof or something
Yeah.
out, or Dranith, which is really good and very important, especially on fourth place.
Hmm.
And you cannot get a oof out turn one with Soul Ring. But I feel
Exactly. That
like,
that was kind of my main thing with it.
yeah,
If you can get that 2 mana, like if you can get that turn 1 Kataki, or that turn 1 Collector Oof, or that turn 1 Dranith, like that's immediately going to put you in a pretty good position to win the game. And that's why Chromox and Lotus Petal are both in there. I did not put Mox Diamond in here for kind of the same reason, because Chromox, there's a lot of things that you can pitch to it. Like if you have like a 6 drop in your hand or a 5 drop or whatever that you're
mm-hmm.
not going to be able to cast for a while, you can like say you have your Elish Norn. Granted, it sucks to pitch that, but like you're not going to cast that for 5 turns, so it's fine to pitch it to a Chromox and get out that turn 1 Dranith and lock people out before they can do anything.
Yeah, I just
Um,
like with you put it in the Chromox and then you put something under the Chromox, and then if you get a oof effect, it's just so many like card disadvantage that you're giving yourself, and this deck can already be like very light on cards draw and card quality.
Yeah, this is true, but there's just too many situations where Chromox has gotten me a turn 2 3 drop that has really impacted the game state.
Mm-hmm.
Versus, like, yeah, getting a Collector Oof onto your own Chromox is not great, but if you get a turn 1 Collector Oof whenever 3 other players have played 4 mana rocks and you played one,
Yeah,
you're
that's
you're
awesome.
still gonna be all right.
Right. Yeah, I think it's just like a slight difference.
Yeah, I think that you can be on either one because you're just not on Chromox, right? Yeah, you're not on Chromox, but you're
Exactly.
on Soul Ring.
It's like value versus speed, I think.
Yeah.
And you really like
Um,
both are very important.
yeah, I think Soul Ring could definitely stay in the deck for sure. It's just I've ran into too many situations where and it's a dead draw later. That was another reason I didn't like it.
Yep.
Um, it's because if you draw that after turn 4, like it's literally just dead in your hand and it doesn't do anything most of the time. Um, okay, so for enchantments, we're both on the same list, I believe. Yeah.
I'm not on blind obedience, but I
Oh,
think
you're not on
that's
board.
wrong because it's so good at stopping treasures. But I do run Karn, so
Yeah, so that's kind of what you're switching out for that, basically. It's blind obedience for Karn. Um, the amount of times blind obedience has fucked people over in my game makes it really
right.
good.
Creatures
I've
entering
killed
tapped is so
people.
good against Kiki
Yeah,
lines too.
yep. It kills Kiki lines. It kills anything with that needs untapped creatures. I've actually killed people with the extort triggers before, which is funny. It's not necessarily super relevant, but it is funny. Um, but as for the other enchantments, so everyone, I think Carpet's way too good not to run. It's if there's a single yeah, if there's not a blue play at your table, you're already in a weird pod. Like people play blue
If
in
there's
a
if
lot
there's
of
not a
decks.
blue player at your table, you are heavily advantaged unless all of them are like Jeskai Storm or so. No,
Yeah, so like if there's like 3 Magda players in you, you're not gonna have a good time unless you find Linvala. But other than that, it's usually pretty.
Die Hada, Corvold, and Magda.
Yeah.
Boy, you wish you have that no world.
Yeah. Deafening Silence is best turn 1 play, in my opinion, for a stacks piece, besides Root Maze. I think Root Maze is probably better on the play, but Deafening Silence is way better into the late game than Root Maze is.
Deafening
Land
Silence does let like some dex combo through it. Like Rocco can just easily go off through a Deafening Silence.
Yeah.
So be careful of that. Don't think of it as a complete like rule of law effect. Because
No, yeah, it's
downsides.
It's just a slow down piece, just like Root Maze is. It's not really meant to stop people from winning. It's meant to slow people down from winning.
Exactly.
Land Tax has been performing quite well. I don't think it's going to get the axe ever for me. Just being able to. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you go down to 5, but you have a land tax, that's basically bullying to 7. Pretty much. It just means that you'll be a little bit slower, but it's really good. It's so good. Root Maze, probably best turn 1 play that we have. If you have a free spell, or if you have a free mana, like a ESG to put down a Dork 2, it's definitely your best turn 1 play.
Yeah, and it's really good against Dockside, because just Dockside loops don't work with Root Maze.
Yes, you'll buy yourself a full turn cycle, maybe even 2, because they can't make infinite mana with it out, which is super, super good. The lands coming in tap for us does hurt a little bit, because that we don't really have a good way to ramp. But the fact that we're not on a ton of fetches makes it usually fine.
Yeah, and we have like the Utopia Sprawl, Wild Growth, Mana Dorks.
Yeah. Yeah, we got plenty of other ways to make mana in the deck, so Root Maze doesn't hurt us too bad. Wild Growth and Utopia Sprawl are pretty good. You should run them. They're 1 mana ramps. Always going to be good.
They are much better, I think, than Llanowar Elves kinds of effects.
Oh, 100%. If I could run 4 copies of Utopia Sprawl and Wild Growth, I would over Dorks.
I find it unfortunate that there isn't more of these kinds of effects.
Yeah, well, there is more, but they all cost 2 or more mana.
Which is not worth it.
Yeah, it's not good at that point. Oromancy's great. Rest in Peace is pretty good. Stony Silence is a must, of course.
Oromancy is goat. Like, if you get this off, and you get a Sigarda with a roll, like, it's over.
Like, you are not touching my board.
I had a game where people reanimated an Archon of Vader's Reach from my graveyard, and they named enchantments. And the only thing I was sad about was that I couldn't cast my Greater Oromancy, because that would have like locked them out of the game. Like, you can just like square up the board where they cannot do anything.
Yeah, they literally cannot use any spot removal on anything that you own, and you just run them over, because unless they have Psych Rift or some other board wipe, they can't do anything to touch you.
And that's the moment to tutor for the Sanctum Prelate.
Yep, that's when you go get your Sanctum Prelate or your Archon of Valor's Reach and aim instant.
Yeah, that's really good as well.
Yeah.
Rest in Peace is very classic,
Yeah, so Rest in Peace has been one I've been thinking about cutting, but the fact that it turns off all breach combos, any graveyard shenanigans, and stops death triggers makes it too good to as a silver bullet card to not include.
Yeah, I find it often that I'm in pots where it does nothing, but sometimes you're in pots where it just kills a player, you know?
Yeah, like if you're playing a Gitrog deck, this just literally turns their entire deck off.
And Tayam it's also great against that, because otherwise Tayam would have probably a pretty advantaged game against us. Yeah,
so this is actually walking into the next card. 2 cards that really good against time. Rest in Peace and Suppression Field. So Suppression Field is an interesting one that me and D-Mage were talking about cutting for a while, just because of the amount of non-bows that we run with it. But it's just too good. The amount of games that this card has either won me the game or put me very, very in a good position is just ridiculous. It hits so many things that people don't think about, It hits all planeswalkers. It hits all fetch lands. It hits all channeled abilities, which makes
Otawara and Boseiju are big ones.
yeah. So like we don't care too much about Beseiju because like if they blow up one of our enchantments, oh well. Like it's not a huge deal to us usually unless it's like a Stony Silence that they're blowing up. But Otawara is a big one
Or
for
a Rule
us.
of Law, you know, it can be
Yeah.
pretty big deal to blow up an enchantment.
Yeah, it can be, but there's only a few enchantments in the deck that we actually care about. A lot of them are on creatures that we usually care about, and Otawara is a big contender of that because it's a great way to get around rule of laws.
Definitely.
But Suppression Field makes it cost 7 mana unless they have legendaries out, which is ridiculous.
Six mana.
Or 6 mana, excuse me. Yeah.
Yeah, what I
But
really like about Suppression Field is it works really good against like our worst matchups. So Yuriko,
yes,
Kinnan, Sisai,
exactly.
Najila, like all of them are like slowed down by Suppression Field. But I feel
Yeah.
like it's not always enough though.
Oh, absolutely no. It's not. It's like if this is your only stack space on board, you're not going to probably be winning that game. But if you drop this on turn 2, you're going to make a lot of people very upset because they turned their deck off a lot. Like dropping this on turn 2 against a Yuriko deck means they're not ninjutsuing until turn 4 most of the time. It means that Sisei costs 7 to activate. It makes not all lines, but like it makes a lot of infinite mana combos much harder to achieve. Like Dockside Loops have to make 2 extra treasures now, which we do feed a fuck ton, but we have a lot of ways to shut off Dockside besides that. Yeah, it's a great card. 2 mana, exactly what I want from a sax piece at 2 mana.
And it makes One Ring more expensive, which people very often forget.
Yes, making it cost 2 every time you tap a One Ring is a world of a difference, especially if they have they have a way to untap it, like with a manifold key or something like that. Makes it
School with Water's Edge.
Yeah, that too. And those abilities cost 2 mana extra to activate as well, so it can just get really. It hits so many little things that people don't think about. And it makes them have to think. And if people are thinking, they're usually making a lot of mistakes on how they play.
Definitely.
Yeah. So even though it does non-bow with a couple things, I think the cards that are most important that it non-bows with, and this is one of the reasons I cut All Sealed, it doesn't combo, it non-bows with Sylvan Safekeeper and Survival of the Fittest. Those are the 2 biggest ones. Because those are like repeatable effects. I guess also Weathered Wayfarer, but we usually only use that like once or twice. But
if you use a Weathered Wayfarer well, you will get much more than 3 mana.
Exactly. So that's why it's like
3 mana and it will provide you like 5 or something the first time.
Exactly. That's why it's not too terrible with that one. But Sylvan Safekeeper and Survival are 2 of the biggest ones that you do have to worry about, and the channel lands. But it's just too good against too many other decks, in my opinion, to not run it.
Yeah. So I find Survival, it's an awesome card, but at first I was like, okay, this is so slow on the Rule of Law. But just
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter because you can also like flash in creatures if you have like mana to spare or whatever. Like it's so awesome.
And a well-timed Aven Mind Sensor, Solitude, Endurance, or Hushwing Griff can easily stop someone from winning. And the fact that you can do it at instant speed and no one can respond to it really makes it way too good. And it just is like, oh, I have this Birds of Paradise that's useless on turn 6. Let me just trade it for an Ellivere and win the game.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like it's ridiculously good. Touch of the Spirit Realm is a card that has been overperforming for me.
It's so funky all of the time. I'm always surprised by how good of plays I can get from Touch. Like it makes no sense.
Just so good. Like the fact that I've protected multiple of my own pieces. Like someone tries to kill my Rule of Law at end of turn, and I'll just bounce it and be like, okay, one person gets a turn, but they aren't that scary. Or I can use it to bounce, like in a game I just won, I used it to bounce a Paco that was getting too big and was going to swing at me for like 12 damage. I'm like, I'm going to bounce it. You're not going to get a trigger off of it, and I killed them with my Saracen at the next turn because I didn't have any other plays. You can kill 1-rings with it, which is pretty huge if you hardcast it.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely.
Hardcasting it is not ideal because it's overcosted for its effect, but it does hit artifacts, which I almost exclusively use it on 1-rings or really big creatures like an Atraxa or something like that. Something where I'm always trading up for the mana cost.
What's really nice is you can just use it through rule flow, because our deck makes a lot of mana, and at some point you are like, okay, I'm kind of done with this rule flow, you know?
Yeah, but you can just channel it.
Yeah, but rule flow also provides a lot of like virtual card advantage, because your opponent's deck will have cards like Dark Ritual, Rite of Flame,
Yeah, that are
and
useless.
they are completely useless. Jessica's Will, like such awesome cards, they are dead in their hand.
Yep. That side is very sad with the rule of law. Yep, it's very fun. Speaking about mana, let's jump back up to the creatures really quick. I think you're on it too. Are you?
Sanctum Weaver, no.
Yeah, no, you're not on Sanctum Weaver. So D-Mage put me back on this one, and I've been testing it, and I liked it. It's big enough to survive Bowmasters, which is a main consideration of it. It's an enchantment, so it buffs our enchantment roll count.
Mm-hmm.
And it can tap for an absurd amount of mana on like turn 3. So basically the pods that I found that it's pretty good in is whenever it's going a little bit slower. Like if you're against a bunch of mid-range decks, this is a great card to see on turn 2.
Mm-hmm.
Because it allows your turn 3 to do 2 plays on turn 3, pretty much. So like you can do turn 1 Dork or turn 1 whatever. Mm-hmm. You can even do turn 1 Pass, honestly. And do turn 2 Sanctum Weaver. Turn 3 you play like an enchantment for 1 mana, and then you can tap Sanctum for 2, and then play something else like a 3-drop, as well as that 1-drop. So and if you're playing any other enchantments on turn 1 or turn 2 besides Sanctum Weaver, it can just do it pretty nicely. It's much... Sorry, go ahead.
No. Yeah, you let's finish your sentence.
It's much worse later game because it takes a full turn for you to wait for that mana. But it is still a pretty good play most of the time because you're going to be generating a ton of mana with it.
It's better than just some mana dork.
Yeah.
Also, I think that this might be one of the best Ranger Captain get a 1-drop decks in CEDH.
It is so good. There's so many options. So I think most of the time what I get is Esper Sentinel most of the time. Secondly, I actually think I get Sylvan Safekeeper. If it's early game, I'll get Esper Sentinel. If it's late game, I'll almost always get Sylvan Safekeeper. I don't think I've grabbed Sarah once off of it, just because I usually don't need it. Yeah, I don't think I've ever grabbed Sarah off of it. I have grabbed Weathered Wayfarer off of it before whenever I was stuck on white lands and I didn't have any green lands. I went and got my Gaia's Cradle and took a couple turns off, but it got there. I don't think I've ever grabbed Allosaurus off of it, just because we don't have it. I took out all the big green spells that we want to push through mostly. If I was running like Triumph of the Hordes or, what's the other one? The green 4 tutor. They have to sack something.
Oh, Natural Order.
Yes, if I was like on those, I might have tutored for that, but I cut both of those long ago.
And effect is still fine because there's still like a lot of random stuff that you want to resolve, you know?
Yeah, like if you can get your Archon of Valor's Reach through naming instance, you kind of just shut off a lot of interaction and then all your spells can't be countered because no one can counter instance.
Exactly.
So another thing with Ranger Captain that I've put into the deck is Dryad Arbor. Because if I don't have a land drop and I have nothing better to do, I can go grab Dryad Arbor with it as well.
Sure, that is actually interesting.
Yeah, because if you don't have a land drop and you want to make sure you still are hitting your land drops on time, you can Ranger Captain for it. Like if you already have enough cards in hand, you don't need Esper.
You won't get a Weathered Wayfarer instead?
Because sometimes it's too slow.
Yeah, it is a bit slower, but yeah, it will take a full turn cycle.
and you have to use mana for Weathered Wayfarer. And if I'm that desperate for a land that I want to go get a Dryad Arbor instead, it can make sense why I wouldn't want to grab a Weathered Wayfarer there.
I mean,
Or
Wayfarer gets
another
cradled,
very
right?
real, yeah. But another real consideration too is if, yeah, I think it's mostly just like the mana. Because like if so, this is assuming like turn 3, I'm putting down a Ranger Captain, but I don't have a fourth land in my hand, and I want to be able to cast Ellivere next turn.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's usually when I've grabbed it with a Dryad Arbor before. Oh no, that doesn't work because I would have already played a land. Oh no, I think it was if I had a mana dork on turn 1, so I had 3 mana on turn 2, cast Ranger Captain, get Dryad Arbor, play Dryad Arbor, turn 3 Ellivere. Yeah, I think that's what I've done before.
I mean, that's pretty decent.
Yeah, like it's better than, because if I would have grabbed Weathered Wayfarer in that instance and I didn't draw any more lands, like that's a full 2 turns of me basically doing nothing or just casting whatever I have in my hand, not developing at all.
Exactly.
That could be pretty bad.
I don't want to go through all of these.
There's way too many to go through. If you want to talk about the lands briefly, there's really only 2 that I want to talk about.
Okay.
First one is Winding Canyons.
Yeah, that one is GOAT. That one
It's
is
so fun.
so strong. Oh. That's
yes.
like usually like my second or third land I get with Wayfarer.
Yeah. Yeah, if you can pull off Wayfarer 3 times, that's people are not playing or people are land dropping like a motherfucker. But
I usually like once Wayfarer's in the game, I just use it every turn.
yeah, no, that makes sense. I just have ran into the situation where after turn 4, people miss land drops, and then I don't then I don't get to trigger it anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, this card is so good. Being able to flash in things, especially like if you hold up your mana because you know someone's going to Psych Rift, and you can and you have like a Cradle as well, you can just tap your Cradle, add like a bunch of green, tap this, replay your key pieces after they Psych Rift, and then it's like, no, Psych Rift didn't even happen.
Yeah,
Good.
it's so fast.
Yeah, it's not great early game because it doesn't really do anything because that 2 mana cost is quite a bit. But once you have that Gaia's Cradle, or this is another great use for Sanctum Weaver as well, it can really surprise people because no one fucking sees Winding Canyons ever.
I had a response where somebody Cyclonic Rift single targeted my Archon of Emeria, my Rule of Law, and then I could respond to it by Winding Canyons a Phyrexian sensor into play.
Yep.
Rule of Law.
Yeah, and you're just like, haha!
That was so funny.
Yeah, they're just like, what? And then the only other one that I've really liked a lot in this deck is Command Beacon.
Yeah,
yeah, this one has saved me from Drannith Lock multiple times. Weathered Wayfarer early or a crop rotation into this to get my commander out before anyone else has theirs out, and I just start going to town whenever they can't do anything.
Exactly.
Is exactly what we want to be doing in this deck.
You need it because your commander is like your main output of card draw and massive damage. Like without your commander, like you are dirtling.
Yeah, it is. You definitely 100%. I wouldn't say you necessarily 100% need your commander, because I did win that humility game with my commander literally not doing anything for 30% or like half the game, but it is very necessary for your card draw to stay online. And for you to keep up your damage output, which in most normal games where you don't run into a humility or something like that really alters the whole game state, it's really good for that. Same reason, just another reason why Touch the Spirit Realm is so good. You can channel it to get rid of a Drannith for a turn, play your commander, and then the Drannith comes back, which is exactly what we want. It's so good. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's nice. All mine. Fun little tech cards. I think Invasion is going to be a mainstay in the deck.
Invasion of Go-Become?
Yeah, it's such a weird card, but it's for the rate, it's just so good.
I think it's kind of contending almost with the same spot as the Everybody Lives.
Yeah, it kind of is, but I think that running three pieces of interaction like that is good. Like three protect all my shit
I think
or protect.
protecting your stuff is very important. Like getting
Yeah,
down something like you cannot target my stacks pieces, like has won me so many games. Like
yeah, yeah. Being able to just be like, I'm going to play this Sigarda. You cannot touch my rule of law anymore. Or you have to use two pieces of interaction in the same turn under a rule of law. Good luck.
when you invasion of Ikoria for Xs4 and nobody knows what you're going to get, and you get the
Yeah,
Sigarda out, and then everybody's like, "Oh my god, that's such a big brain move." Like, of
yeah,
course, what you want to do is interact with my stacks pieces. All my stuff is out on the board.
yeah. Because it's a very fun little interaction there. So I do think that I think three slots is probably what the deck is gonna keep running for protection like that. I don't think running more than that is probably too worth it, just because we really only need it once or maybe twice.
I mean, I think we
Um,
already run more than. Yeah, we run three like instant slots. We run Sylvan, but I find it very nice that we now added Shalai, which I
yeah,
think makes sense. I mean, Sigarda is just such an overperformer. And then Legolas, Everybody Lives,
yeah. I meant more
Winter.
instant speed versions of it, but yeah, we run a fuck ton of protection effects. Yeah, I don't know if the total like hold on, let me put my tags on this one and see because I think I have it tagged for protection. It includes stuff like Cavern of Souls and whatnot too, but yeah, so we have Silence, Safekeeper, Oromancy, Invasion, Touch the Spirit Realm, Shalai, and Sigarda, and also it should be yeah, in Greater Oromancy. Yeah, so whenever you're kind of thinking about all of that, there's a decent amount of protection in the deck. Like there's one, two, three, four, two, three, four. Yeah, there's four cards at least. Oh, I don't have them all tagged. Yeah, I forgot to tag Legolas's. So there's six cards that I'm running currently that actively say you can't touch my stuff. And then there's like another six cards that says you can't counter my stuff or like a silence effect.
Yeah,
So I
right.
think six is probably good. I just really love Invasion because it has a double purpose because it also buffs your dudes every single time after you flip it, which is
Which
just
is
crazy.
so funny.
Yeah, it's so good. But I think that probably Everybody Lives is going to get cut for Tamio's safekeeping just because it's not good early game, which is where we can win or lose the game most of the time. Like, yeah, it can prevent wins in the later game, but we have a lot of stacks pieces that can do that already.
Yeah, and just protecting your null world is so valuable.
Yeah, especially like early game because not it's like not everybody's going to have removal on that first three turns. Like no one's going to usually mull for removal and
Exactly.
so if you just have that one mana, like you're holding up that one mana on turn three, going into turn four, cast your Ellivere, and then you just they try and blow up your null rod or whatever before you take your turn, you just be like, nope, and it's
Do
pretty
you want to do
good.
some mulligans? Or you just talk through
Sure. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
and then I think that's so this I would snap keep.
Yeah, this is pretty good. It's not the best hand ever because it only has three mana sources. I'd really like one more land instead of like blind obedience, probably.
I
But this is
have
definitely
I have ramp. I
yeah.
have both my colors. I have access to a null world effect. I have access to a rule of law effect, and then I have access to protection effect. It's like it's crazy good.
Oh no, yeah. This is still very good. I would still keep this. I've just seen better hands. Like I would say this is probably like out of a scale of 10, this is probably like a 7 or an 8
I would
because
say
you would go turn 1 elf, turn 2 probably stony silence, and probably turn 3 hopefully you draw another land and then you probably just go turn 3 Ellivere followed up or yeah, you probably go turn 3 Ellivere and then you drop Oromancy and Phyrexian Censer turn after that.
so. I think for me it would strongly depend on the pot, but once like I would maybe use this even as a turn two Phyrexian sensor because it kind of gives me a lot of like feeling of safety.
Yeah, turn 2 Phyrexian Sensor is never bad, especially with this hand, because you just have a lot of really nice, impactful things to play turn after turn. Like, you just play your Phyrexian Sensor on turn 2, people just play their Mana Rocks, and then you follow up with a Greater Auramancy the next turn, let them keep developing their Mana Rocks that they can't really use that well, and then that next turn you'd be like, Stony Silence. And now you can't get rid of it either, so you better have a counter spell.
Yeah, or maybe even cast Ellivere before, and then just go to town with the Phyrexian Sensor, draw some cards, and then next turn, like they are already quite slowed down by just having one card a turn, and then
Yep.
afterwards draw the silence. Okay, let's
Yeah,
do another
this
hand.
is pretty good. This is pretty good. This one is still pretty good. I'd probably still keep this.
I mean, turn 2 Stony Silence is pretty okay, but if you get it offered or Swan Songed, you are at least you have a turn 3 Eidolon.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking. Like, if you get your turn 2 Stony Silence countered, you still have a Eidolon of Rhetoric to kind of slow down the game and let you kind of draw back into stuff. And the fact that you have a Prelate and Survival also pretty good.
I would keep it, but I would say that this would be like a 6.5.
Yeah, that sounds about right. It's a little slow, but it does have a decent game plan. Turn 2 Stony Silence, turn 3 Eidolon, and then kind of go from there.
Exactly. So let's do another hand.
This one's a little risky. I would probably mulligan this one, even though it has a turn 2 Dranith.
It depends heavily on the pot.
And place
turn 2 Dranith is just not. Maybe if you're first seed, you could be off to keep it. Second seed, perhaps, but
it's just the fact that you have to draw 2 mana sources, be that a land or a dork. You do have all of your colors with Savannah and Temple Garden. So if this was a mult of 5, I would keep this.
Yeah, I would bottom the Prelate and
I'd probably bottom Prelate and Yasharn, actually.
Yeah, Yasharn takes a long time, but once you get him, you do get some lands.
Yeah, but if we don't draw those lands, we're not going to be able to cast him. At least Touch the Spirit Realm, you could actually cast and impact the board at some stage of the game.
Yeah.
You could use it to protect your Dranith if you really just need to buy time. So I think the 5, if I was mulling this to 5, would probably be Temple Garden, Savannah, Dranith, Touch, and probably Blind Obedience as well. Yeah, I'd probably bottom the Prelate and the Yasharn. This one's probably like a 5, maybe a 4 on the scale, just because you really want at least three sources of mana in your starting hand. That's kind of the magic number I've seen, is like, unless you have like a something like an Esper Sentinel, or a Jeweled Lotus or something like that to get out Ellivere really early, that you have to have 3 mana sources for the deck to do well.
I love Esper Sentinel in this deck. Just putting a Virtuous Rule on it is so awesome.
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, go ahead, pay 4 for that.
Or 7.
Yeah, or 7. Yeah. Okay. So we have Cavern, Boseiju, Dark, Elvish Spirit Guide. This is 2 mana, 3 with that. Oh, you can cast Tecatli with the Cavern too.
Yeah, it's all humans.
That's pretty good. I think I'd probably keep this.
I think for Cavern, this is a really good Cavern hand, because Cavern can be like very all over the place in this deck.
You have 2 things you can cast with it, which is, I didn't realize Tecatli was a human. That makes it pretty even better. Yeah, because you can use it to cast probably obviously do nothing on turn 1. Turn 2, you probably cast Tecatli. Probably. No one's really going to counter it, usually.
Which is still like kind of slow, I feel like.
This is a slow hand for sure, but like, it's not amazing. If this was second 7, I would probably keep it. If this was a 6, I probably wouldn't keep this as a first 7. Probably not. Just because it also depends on the pod. Like, if I'm playing against no decks that care about ETBs that much, like a Kinnan deck, like a Kinnan deck. What else doesn't care about ETBs? Like Sisay doesn't necessarily care about ETBs that much, or they don't need to because they can run Planeswalker lines.
So
What doesn't
yeah,
care about it?
uh,
Just decks that don't care about ETBs as much, then this would be much worse against. Like Esper Shells probably don't care a ton about ETBs, besides like exactly casting Tivit and Thassa, but they don't really
and
care if they're Thassa.
Displacer. No, 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 no. That's a cast trigger. So what I think also with this hand is you kind of want to slow roll the Tocatli Honor Guard because it will show that it's a
Yeah,
Solitude, and your Solitude is actually like a well placed Solitude can really like disrupt people. If you have a core vault and you just bless that thing out of there at the right moment, it can be
yeah,
hurtful.
or like a turn one Talion on 1 or 2, and you just be like, no, get out of this game.
I think
I think you're right.
it's a slow hand. You need like the other people to keep each other in check. If there's only like one blue deck, like I wouldn't keep this. But if you are
Yeah,
like with three blue decks, I would keep this because then Destiny Spinner is very good
gotta do
actually.
some work. Yeah, gotta do some work.
So I think in a blue pot this hand becomes better. And then also Tocatli Honor Guard is better because you know they will have Toracles.
Yeah, for sure. I think
Alright.
that it's probably a good first 7. This one's pretty heavily pod dependent, but I think that you could probably keep it.
Ooh.
Snap keep.
Manifest Mana,
Snap keep.
Deafening Silence, Pilgrim. You wish not to be first, so you can have a carpet into Deafening Silence turn 1.
Even if I didn't, a turn 1 deafening silence into turn 2 carpet plus pilgrim is still
Awesome.
so good.
Yeah, this is the best hand we've seen today.
Yeah, that's the best one. I think it's turn 1 deafening silence or plus a carpet would just be amazing.
Yes. Alright.
Also snap keep, even though actually maybe not. It has so much mana but no creatures.
Turn 1, I would run out turn 1 Commander with this. In the second 7, I would definitely keep it.
Yeah, I think I would. I don't know if I would keep this on a first 7 though.
Yeah, but
It depends. It depends on if the Stony Silence was going to be good or the Blind Obedience was going to be really good. Then maybe I would keep it. But not having any creatures is a pretty big downside.
but
Obviously, we would slow roll the Stony for a while.
drawing a creature is like the easiest thing to do in this deck.
We do run like 30 plus, so it's
Yeah.
not the hardest thing to do, but I have bricked out on like 3 draws in a row where I had something like this, and I just felt terrible because I had a commander and nothing to do with it.
Yeah, we do run a lot of mana, but then again, I feel like like sometimes you just have to let the other people keep each other in check. Like sometimes
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
all you can
sometimes
do.
you got to be a little parasitic. You can't always mulligan for stacks. But
Exactly.
this one has 2 pretty good stacks pieces, especially like a turn 1 blind. I would probably do so. It would be Gemstone, exile the forest, play the mana crypt, play your other land. So that gives you 4 mana. I mean, you can't pass on turn 1 Ellivere. You just can't, right?
I don't
There's no
know.
way.
I've seen people like turn 1 solitude it because they're like, oh, you play your commander turn 1, but I think that might be the wrong play. I think the right play is to indeed cast turn 1 Ellivere and then just hope you draw Archon of Emeria like sometime soon.
Yeah, just draw any big four, like drop a turn 2 Yasharn and just watch the table cry.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's probably the play with this one. And then you can drop your blind and Sony a little bit later. Hopefully nobody wins on turn
I
2.
think I would still keep it as a first 7 because it's just so much mana, but the mana crypt and Stony Silence combination will hurt you.
Yeah, that's what I said. You slow roll it. Like you do Ellivere turn 1, and then you probably drop Blind Obedience turn 2, even if you don't draw a creature. Oh, so you drew your rule of law. Perfect. Yeah, that would have been a good hand. Especially because you could follow. Yeah, that would have been good.
Alright, this
No lands.
unplayable.
Yep, no lands. Um, I would keep this for
Sure, me
sure.
too. Two mana
It
dorks,
doesn't.
some acceleration, crop together, Cradle, Yasharn does something, Shalai does something. It's not the
This is
best
a
hand.
turn. This is what a turn. So turn 1 birds. Turn to Avacyn's Pilgrim plus crop rotation into Gaia's Cradle. in end step, and then turn 3 Yasharn. It's still good enough.
Yeah, turn
I,
3
it's
just
affecting
Sharn
the
with 2 mana up. So if you draw like a Oof or a No Rot, you could still play it even.
Yeah, I think that's probably still good enough. Against a turbo dex, I might not keep this hand. Like if there was 2 turbo decks at the table, or like say there was a Magda, a Rogsai, and something else. Like people who are parasitic and just want to combo off as quickly as possible, like a Godo or something like that. I would probably mulligan this hand.
Agreed.
But if it's just the typical mid range decks, yeah, I would keep this.
If you have 2 or more blue players that are like not looking to kill you as fast as possible, this is pretty fine.
Yeah. This one's all right. Going in first seat, this hand is not amazing. And if there's blue play, there obviously needs to be blue players at the table for this hand to be pretty good. But this would be like turn 1 carpet, assuming that you're not in first seat. Well, you wouldn't even, honestly, it would
Doesn't
probably be a
matter.
turn 1 Riot Arbor.
You would run a turn 1 Dryad Arbor?
If I didn't draw anything else.
No, I would run a turn 1 Carpet and then just
Well,
next turn I
this
have
is
3 mana and then I could Invasion, like worst case, if I'm like nothing's coming, I could get a Esper Sentinel and then turn 3 with the third land I will play my commander, put a roll on the Esper Sentinel, just draw cards.
I guess that you could always pitch Dryad to Force of Vigor, which is very nice. Um, I was just thinking, like, if there was no islands played on turn 1
Mm-hmm.
before you in your seat, I think I would run out the turn 1 Dryad Arbor.
Yeah?
It's pretty bad play, but like that gives you a little bit extra time to get that carpet mana, and then you can just play your carpet in your first main phase, go to second main phase, then you have what that would be 1, 2, 3 mana, possibly. I mean, yeah, it would be 3 mana in that situation. Then you can invasion for 1 and get probably still Esper.
No, you will only have access to 2 mana, so you can't Esper on the
Oh,
second turn.
you can't get. Well, you know,
Unless
you
they
don't.
have 2 islands, but usually I feel like people just get 1 island and then like they get some random other lands.
Well, no. So if you did turn 1 Dryad Arbor, turn 2 you drop a carpet in main phase 1, then you move to main phase 2. Oh, because then you wouldn't have the Arbor mana.
Exactly.
Oh, then
So
yeah, you just drop carpet turn 1 regardless of
I
the
think
situation.
dropping carpet turn 1, just ignoring the Dryad Arbor, it will come to Force of Vigor. It can
Yeah.
carry a Virtuous Roll if needed.
That's why I keep on wanting to possibly. I keep going back and forth on wanting Dryad Arbor versus not wanting it because it's super good for a Green Sun Zenith on turn 1 for X equals 0 because it's basically a ramp and it's a creature that you can enchant. Also, doesn't get blown up by Coin Ritual, fun fact, which is
Oh,
nice.
nice. Non-lands,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, so that is nice, but I don't know. I don't know if it's worth the slot. If it's worth
I
running
find here
30
it's
grand.
pretty awkward. Here I just rather have.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
and that's why I
better than
don't.
a
And
land
that's why I
here.
don't like it. It's just awkward in starting hands mostly, and it's a dead draw kind of later in the game.
And I find that I almost never like invasion or something for it. It's just like it's not worth it.
Yeah, it's literally just there mostly for Green Suns for 1 or for the rare Ranger Captain. But like you said, we have plenty of Ranger Captain targets.
We have the most luxurious ranger
We have
suite.
so many. Okay, I think we've convinced me to cut it. I think that's what we've done here.
All right.
Like you can also another one more good thing about Dried Arbor, again, it's showing up in our hand and we hate it. You can tutor for it off of fetches
Yeah, that's
if you don't have
pretty.
creatures.
That's a pretty nice interaction for like forced fetch and just have something to put a roll on.
Yeah, like if you don't have something to put it on, you can grab that, which is nice.
I think I would still just keep this hand because just the Llanowar elves is pretty decent. Like the invasion early game is okay. I mean to
I
flip
actually
it
love
early.
Invasion early
Hmm?
game. I love Invasion early
Yeah,
game.
to flip it early game is pretty powerful. Crop
Yeah.
rotation will get us a lot of mana, so our commander will be out fast and we will start drawing cards. I think it's pretty decent.
Yeah, this is keepable. It's not amazing, but Invasion's kind of like a pseudo stacks piece. It just slows down one person. So Invasion's really good whenever you have one person that's really far ahead and two people that are not as far ahead. So you can kind of bring them down to everybody else's level and smooth it out that way. I also really love Invasion because another reason I love it is because almost nobody's going to block it. They want all of their creatures, and Ellivere's a 4/4, so she kills it immediately.
Hmm.
And swinging 4 damage versus getting an invasion trigger and getting +3/+3 or +2/+2 to your board, like total in stats, is more than worth it to not do that 4 damage to somebody.
Exactly. Yeah, that's very nice about Invasion. Like, I think I will try this card.
It's
Because
really good.
Ellie,
It's and no one expects it, and it does surprisingly good work.
because Ellie needs to swing, and often she doesn't really have a target to swing.
Yeah, just like swinging 4 at somebody's face, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna take 4, I'm gonna chump it. And it's like, but I don't have to chump it if you swing at this thing, and I get a ton of value from it.
Yep.
Okay, so I just cut Dried Arbor. Now I have to put something in. This one, it's really, really slow. Really slow.
It
Turn
does
1 Deafening
nothing.
Silence is good, but
If
I
it's like a
don't think
mill
I.
to 4 or 5, I would keep it, you know?
Yeah, and just pitch your Archon and then keep like all the lands.
Exactly.
Except for, like if it was a mull to 5, I'd keep the Deafening Silence, the Windswept, the Beseiju. Would I even? No, I'd probably keep the Sigarda because I have to have something. So I'd probably keep 3 lands, Deafening Silence, and Sigarda. I honestly might pitch Cradle there,
Yeah, me
which
too,
is
because
so
Cradle doesn't
sad.
do anything at the beginning for such a. Yeah.
Just having that guaranteed mana versus the Cradle, you have to draw 1 drops for it to work. Like, that's a little sketch.
But at 7, I would mulligan this.
Yeah, I would definitely mulligan this at 7 as well. Um,
Another Dryad Arbor.
yeah, so Dryad Arbor keeps showing up, and it keeps showing why it's bad. Because this is a garbage hand. If with Dryad Arbor, this would be fine with a Forest instead.
Yeah,
So you can do
it's a
turn 1
weird symbol.
Safekeeper, turn 2 Invasion. It's still pretty slow, and no real
It
stacks. But
doesn't really do anything, and it doesn't accelerate out mana. Like I'm not sure if I like this hand even on the first
I
sight.
would I would probably keep this at 5 and
Sure,
bottom the Winding Canyons and Archon probably.
absolutely, absolutely. But at 7, like I'm not
At
keeping
7, this is
this.
a mull. Yeah, this is a mull at 7.
It's yeah. Ah, this bullshit.
So
No
close, but
lens.
yet so far. There's an Ancient Tomb, but it doesn't tap for colored mana.
This is
This one's
fine.
tempting. I think this. Oh yeah, this is fine. We have a Wayfarer. Yeah,
Yeah, the
you just do
Wayfarer
turn
makes
1
it
Wayfarer.
awesome. I would play turn 1 Wayfarer and Delighted Halfling, I think.
Yeah, with the Elvish Spear Guide. Yeah.
And here is like another example where I'm like not so impressed by the goose.
No. So the goose is fine in this exact scenario.
Because there's
So,
2 mana dorks.
well, even if there wasn't 2 mana dorks, this would still be fine. So all you would have to do, so you do turn 1 Wayfarer
Hmm.
and goose. I don't know if I would cast the goose with an Elvish Spirit Guide though.
I would like cast the Delighted Halfling with the Elvish Spirit Guide, I think.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, so say we didn't have the Delighted Halfling, say it was literally
Right.
any other card. So turn 1 Horizon Canopy into Weathered Wayfarer, and then we'll put down the goose as well with the Elvish Spirit Guide.
Of course,
So
because we're
then,
weathered wayfaring for a cradle, and then we want a
yeah,
creature.
yeah. So then you Weathered Wayfarer on turn 2 using the canopies, assuming you don't draw any more lands. It's fine because you're going to Wayfarer anyways. Play your Cradle. So that means then you have 2 mana from the Cradle and a third one from your goose.
Mm-hmm.
So you probably wouldn't necessarily do anything with it. And that's again if you use the goose. Yeah, I probably wouldn't use the mana. Yeah, because I wouldn't want to do a finale for 1. I don't think that's worth it most of the time. Or an invasion on 1. Like you could grab a Sylvan Safekeeper, but like, It doesn't seem very good most of the time. I would rather save the mana and use it on another turn for an oof. And then turn 3, it would be uh, maybe Wayfarer again, possibly. But turn 3, you could do so. Then your Gaia's Cradle would tap for 2. Then you have your Goose, your Halfling, and a land, and your Wayfarer. So you probably tap your land, tap your Halfling, tap your Cradle. So that's 4, and chant your Goose. There you go. You now have a flying attacker.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is a hand where Goose is pretty fine. It all depends on what you draw and the pot. Like, Invasion for a Collector Oof is pretty decent, you know. There's some
Yeah,
places where it will just kill straight up murder decks. Um, I really also like Aethersworn Canonist because of this reason. Just being able to get a Rule of Law
at the early drop.
for 4 mana on the thing.
The only reason I don't like it because rule of laws are good late game, right? And they're the like if I drop an Aethersworn Canonist on turn 2 and I have 4 or more cards left in my hand, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to being able to develop that well. And artifact decks, which is a lot of decks, can still play as many artifacts as they want in a single turn.
Yeah, and you can still go through Hullbreaker
Yeah,
Horror, and Tidespout Tyrant combo.
Yeah, so those are the reasons I actually cut that card from my deck. It wasn't quite performing as much as I wanted it to. It's also a human, so you can't grab it with Invasion.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
good
so that
catch.
was another reason it wasn't super great. Like, yeah, you can still grab it with Finale, but and you can't grab it with Green Suns, of course, but you can't grab it with Finale, which is another bad reason. It's like a decent stack piece at 2 mana, but like I'd much rather be landing a suppression field turn 2. I'd much rather be landing a Kataki turn 2. I'd much rather be landing a collector oof turn 2. There's just a lot
Collector
of
Oof
things
for
that
sure. Kataki, I'm not convinced yet, but maybe I should just try it out.
it's quite good because it's still like it's another one of those ones that you can kind of sandbag for a second. Like you can do that turn 1 door, turn 2 play something else, turn 3 you drop a Kataki plus something else, and honestly the best part about it is whenever everybody drops those like turn 1 mana crypts, or mana crypt's a nice one because it's free, but like a turn 1 soul ring and that's their only play, and then turn 2 you drop a Kataki before them, then they have to tap their soul ring for mana and you basically just hog their entire first turn.
Yeah.
And Kataki's another one of those ones that's not a good hard lock piece, but it's a very 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 good tempo piece. Because like any like say they play that like the turn 1 Jeweled Lotus, but they don't have enough colored mana yet to cast their commander. Now they have to pay mana for that Jeweled Lotus. Same thing for like Lotus Petals or Treasures even. Um, any of those things, and Kataki can kind of turn them off. And if you pair Kataki with any of the like a Root Maze or a Blind Obedience or any of those kinds of effects where artifacts tap, then it just becomes super debilitating because then they can't even like do anything with their mana before they have to pay for it on their turn. It comes in tap, and then they have to pay for it again on their next turn. So it's been performing well for me so far.
Okay. Well, nice. I think this might be a good last hand.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a keep for
Yeah,
sure.
it's pretty good. Nothing to say
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah, you just play the Lotus Petal, but you don't really do anything with it. Turn 1, you play Wayfarer. Turn 2, you play Blind Obedience and activate your Wayfarer probably. Or you could, yeah, I'd probably hold up the Tocatli. I'd probably play the
Depends
Blind
on
first.
all depends on the pot. I feel like that's really the thing with this deck. You really need to know and understand your opponent's deck very well. And
Yeah,
then
that's the
if you
hardest part of the deck, for
because
sure.
you get like one piece of interaction like almost every turn. You just play one piece of interaction and you have to like anticipate what all of them are going to be doing. It's
Yeah.
so difficult.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to sometimes navigate. It's been like, okay, what does this person want to be winning the game with, and how do I stop that or slow that down?
But if you get those 150 IQ plays, it's like very rewarding. That's the reason
Yes,
I
it
think to
is.
play this deck, right?
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Okay, but yeah, I think that's good. I think that's a pretty good way to talk about everything. I gotta figure out a card to put in for the dried arbor because you convinced me to cut it.
Nice. Well, you could have a comparison with my list. I really do like Karn though.
I'm not a fan of it just because it costs too much mana.
It does cost a lot of mana, but with Soul Ring you make a lot of mana easy.
So you just want me to stick in Soul Ring?
You could stick in Soul Ring. It might not be the worst actually. You have a lot of. Should I check? Should I compare with mine?
Oh, can you actually? Oh, you can.
Yeah, just very easy. Oh, I put in a living plane
Oh
to
yes,
see
with
what
the
that's about.
Elish Norn and Linvala.
Oh, and grant Abolisher. Then not being able to counter your spells is actually pretty nice.
Only during your turn, though.
Yeah,
It's
but
it's so bad to drop that on turn 2. It feels
it
so bad
is.
to play it on turn 2. If you even can, because it's double white pips.
I think the best card you're missing out on is Eladamri's Skull.
You think?
I mean, just a tutor, instant speed. You play it at the end of their turn. Doesn't care about rule of law so much. It's like another invasion or another finale.
Yeah, it's just the fact that you still had to actually cast the creature, so it kind of non-bows a little bit with rule of law, because you have to tutor for the creature and then cast it,
But it's an
which is why I
instant.
wasn't on it, but I could see myself. There's like 3 cards that I would want to put back in, and that is all Seal of Life's Bounty because I love that
Uh
card.
huh.
It's really good for protection. It does everything that we wanted to do. It has lifelink. It's an enchantment. It's a creature. Like, what more could you want from a creature?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of them that I want to put in. Eladamri's Call is another one. I don't think I'm going to put in Soul Ring. I think I don't. I don't want to be on it.
That's fine.
Let's see what else. Unique to that. Oh, you're on Elvish Mystic as well. I really want to put back in Halvar. I want to test it more with every. I want to run all of them. I want to run all of the 4 mana creatures, but I can't. I can't run them all.
You know
Um,
what drop was really good with like 4 mana? What combos really well with 4 mana spells?
what?
Soul
Grand
Ring.
Evolution? What?
Soul Ring.
You're not wrong. Okay, you're
Well,
not
I
wrong.
think I think the best card you're missing out on is Eladamri's. It's just like having a tutor is like so good.
You're missing out on Goose. You should
Yeah.
100%. You should trade that Findhorn Elves for a Goose.
Hmm.
100%.
I'll try it. I'll try it. I'm definitely
Bowmasters
trying
is
the
too
older cards
rampant.
and the blind obedience.
Yeah, I think Blind is pretty good too. I'm still not 100% sold on Sanctum Weaver, but it's basically like Sanctum Weaver for all sealed. But that's kind of like the trade there. I've been liking Tecatli so far. Yeah, just Archon for Halvar. I think I'm gonna. I think I'm gonna put in Eladamri's Call for now.
I'm very curious about Living Plane because we do have like two cards that really combo well with it. We have the Elish
Um,
Norn and we have the 4 mana activated abilities can't be activated.
yeah, so I actually tried it out for a while,
Uh huh.
but the problem is that you had to draw it naturally.
You do.
Like we have a decent amount of tutors for both Elishnorn and Linvala. Like we have a decent amount for both of those, but they are both pretty mana intensive already.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically, you have to have something like a cradle, and
Definitely.
then hope that they don't counter the living plane, and then you follow your living plane up with your tutored Linvala or your tutored Elishnorn, and that's because again,
That's a lot
and
to
there's a lot of
ask.
problems with that because we're a rule of law deck. If you want to resolve both these things in the same turn, granted, I guess you could already have an Elishnorn on the field or a Linvala on the field and then play living plane afterward. But if you want to try and do it all in one turn, that's almost impossible to do with the tutor cost plus the cost of living plane. Like that's like
Sure.
fucking at least 10 mana. Could be more if it's like Court of Calling or something like that.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
pretty dead draw if you don't have any of them.
yeah, that was the main problem with that card for me. Like Elish Norn and Linvala are good by themselves. Elish Norn better late game, of course, because it's fucking 7 mana. But Linvala is great. Linvala has been that's like I think behind Dranith, that's my best card in terms of performance.
I think
Yeah,
Ultimatum Mind Sensor is really good as well.
it hasn't been coming up a lot actually for me. It's number 2 on my list. Or it's came up twice in my 60 something games. That it's like the best card that won me the game. 2 out of those games.
Sometimes you also don't know it because people will be very silent about the tutors that they have in their hands.
That is true. That is true. Linvala has been the best proactive one behind Dranith Magistrate for me. It's even been performing better than Collector Roof.
Yeah, Linvala is very strong effect.
Yeah, Linvala has been
Especially,
good fun.
yeah.
But I that was the reason I cut Living Plane a while ago. Is just because it's such a dead draw until you have one of those or a way to get one of those. Like, yes, it's a good way to just kind of nuke the board and win. But if you draw early game, it's one of the most dead draws that you can really have.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it might still be interesting. The other thing I'm considering is Ashaya, because it stops
For
Cyclonic
Cycliff
Rift.
protection,
Yeah.
yeah. It's just a lot of mana for just that one thing is the problem. I considered it as well. I considered another card. What was it called?
But the other thing that's really good against Cyclift, that's even more mana, that's the Archon.
Yeah,
So
but Archon's good because it shuts off all instants,
it
not
is
just
really good. It is really
it's
good.
not just Psych Rift, because Ashaya only stops Psych Rift. There's really no utility in it besides that. But everything that we have to protect against Psych Rift, which is mostly just Sanctum Prelate and Archon, both have much greater utility outside of that because they shut off all 2 CMC spells, which is a lot. And then it also shuts off all instants usually, which is another very, very, very
Pretty
important.
good against Talion also to have a Sanctum on too.
Yeah, it's just like get wrecked. You're never getting Italian
Dead,
triggers and
no.
top creatures again. Yeah, like I was considering running Glorious Protector at one point, which is a really weird card. It's in the sideboard, I think. It might not even be in the sideboard of the main deck. It might be. Nope, it's not. I'll have to search it up. Glorious Protector. Like I was thinking about running this one, which is it's really, really, really bad. But in the same vein as Ashaya.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really bad, especially if someone kills it in response to the ETB, and then you just never get your stuff back. It feels really bad.
Yeah, this is not something I would go for, no.
No, like I said, I tried it for like 2 games, and I was like, this is garbage. But Ashaya is all right because it's a huge body, which is nice, especially if you can give it like Trample or something like that. But it's just 5 mana is a lot in this deck. Like we want to be able to Windmill Slam a 5 mana card and then almost win the game, like Halvar or Archon
Yeah,
or.
and it doesn't really combo with the rest of what we're doing.
Yeah, so I just am not a huge fan of it. It's not like a hard stacks piece. It's just not quite good enough in my opinion.
Alright, I think this is enough for today.
Yeah, it's been a lot. I need to go to sleep soon.
Yeah, same.
But it was nice talking to you.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, thank you for all the insights in this deck.
Yeah.
I think
No problem.
this might be interesting as like a kind of like a review primer kind of thingy.
Yeah. For sure, for sure. Let me if you have a video to it, I'll link it in the just send me the link and I'll put it in the primer for the
Absolutely.
suppression.